Your Locked On Blackhawks, your daily podcast on the Chicago Blackhawks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everyone? Welcome on in to another episode of Locked On Blackhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, I'm your host, Jack Bushman. Go and check me out on Twitter at JackBushman2, or you could also go and follow my Strictly Blackhawks account at Talkin' Hockey for all the latest Blackhawks news and updates. And quickly, just a reminder to make sure you're subscribed to the YouTube channel if you haven't done so already. I know well over 50% of the viewers right now aren't subscribed. What are you doing? Do me a huge favor. Go and smash that subscribe button. Like, comment, subscribe. If you're listening to the audio version, go and leave me a review. I would greatly appreciate that as well. Do everything, please, to drive the SEO in this direction. I'm really trying hard to grow the channel right now, so I would really appreciate that. And also, that way you can get the latest episode as soon as it becomes available each and every day. All right, good afternoon, everyone. As always, thank you all for joining me on another episode of Locked On Blackhawks, your one-stop shop for all things Chicago Blackhawks. And thank you all for making the show your very first listen here to start off your Monday, your Sunday afternoon. It's kind of a odd recording time for me personally over here, but what I wanted to start off the show with today is why I'm kind of getting this episode out a little bit ahead of time before the start of the week. And it's another reminder as to why it is an exciting time to be a fan of the Chicago Blackhawks. Words that hadn't come out of my mouth for far too long prior to these last couple of months. But man, we know everything has changed drastically.
Your Locked On Blackhawks, your daily podcast on the Chicago Blackhawks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everyone? Welcome on in to another episode of Locked On Blackhawks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Jack Bushman. Go and check me out on Twitter at JackBushman2, or you could also go and follow my Strictly Blackhawks account at Talkin' Hockey for all the latest Blackhawks news and updates. Also, quickly, just another reminder to make sure that you're subscribed to the YouTube channel if you haven't done so already. And I know well over 50% of the viewers right now aren't already subscribed. What are you guys doing? Do me a huge favor. Go and hit that subscribe button. Like, comment, all of that good stuff. If you happen to be listening to the audio version, go and leave me a review, rate me 5 stars. I would greatly appreciate that as well. It helps me out tremendously. I'm really trying to grow the show right now. Hockey season is right around the corner, and also that way you can get the latest episode as soon as it becomes available each and every day. All right, good afternoon, everyone. As always, thank you all for joining me on another episode of Locked On Blackhawks, your one-stop shop for all things Chicago Blackhawks. And thank you all for making the show your very first listen here to start off your week. You might be listening to this on Monday morning, Monday afternoon, Sunday afternoon, potentially, depending on when you see it. It's kind of a little bit of an odd recording time for me here today. But the reason why I wanted to get this episode out a little earlier ahead of the start of the week is because we got another reminder recently as to why it is an exciting time to be a fan of the Chicago Blackhawks. Words that hadn't come out of my mouth for far too long prior to these last couple of months. But as we now know, things have drastically changed with Connor Bedard coming to Chicago, with the Blackhawks winning the draft lottery, getting that first overall selection, being able to check off that generational talent box. It's arguably the hardest one to check off when you go through a full-scale rebuild. Things have changed drastically, no other way to put it, since Connor Bedard has been selected first overall. But there, of course, also has to be something said about the tremendous job that general manager Kyle Davidson has done in the short time since taking over for obviously Stan Bowman, the previous general manager, because even though it's only been a year and a half and he's had to make some difficult decisions, like going into a full-scale rebuild, particularly just after the Blackhawks 1 year earlier had seemingly exited that phase, right? When they went and traded for Marc-Andre Fleury, traded for Seth Jones to kind of have one last-ditch playoff effort. It wasn't particularly a favorite choice from the fan base for the Blackhawks to enter this rebuild again, knowing that is going to be a long haul until we were going to see competitive hockey, meaningful hockey, postseason hockey. We knew it was going to be a long time, and there were some difficult decisions along the way. Obviously, trading Patrick Kane, trading Alex DeBrincat, letting Dylan Strome walk, just to name a couple, trading Kirby Dach, right? There were a lot of tough decisions along the way, but it just feels like even though it's been a year and a half, the job that general manager Kyle Davidson has done, sticking to his plan, and that's what he's done. He's stuck to his plan through thick and thin, and it feels like it's worked out better than any of us really could have anticipated in the, less than 2 years that it's been since he was announced as the full-time general manager. It has been absolutely incredible, and we got another reminder of that just last week, Blackhawks fans, as Corey Pronman of The Athletic released his top 10 NHL prospect pool rankings, and coming in at number 2, not number 1 like I had hoped, but hey, I'll still take number 2, was none other than our Chicago Blackhawks. And for far too long, a huge issue with this organization after the 2015 Stanley Cup was you were trying to retool with guys that were pieces to the puzzle in the past, not guys that are pieces to the puzzle right now. And Stan Bowman got in this habit of bringing back former Stanley Cup champions and trying to put back together what used to be, and it never worked out. And by doing that, by trading all these draft picks, the Blackhawks had really ignored their farm system for far too long. I mean, they really had not developed anyone for the greater portion of 4, 5, 6 years down in Rockford. That had been kind of a useless part of the organization for far too long, but that has not been the case under general manager Kyle Davidson's watch. He's obviously accumulated a ton of draft picks in the process and has put the Blackhawks in a really good spot moving forward. And boy, do you absolutely have to be excited about it. Coming in at number 2, none other than the Chicago Blackhawks. Going through the rest of Corey Pronman's top 10 rankings here, just to kind of give you all a little bit of perspective on who else, what other teams have some really solid prospect pools across the NHL. Coming in at number 1, the only team ranked ahead of our Chicago Blackhawks was the Anaheim Ducks, and I certainly do understand why. I mean, Trevor Zegras has been an absolute stud. Leo Carlsson, even though there was some controversy with him going number 2 overall, and personally, Adam Fantilli would have been my pick. There's no denying that the talent level that he possesses. Mason McTavish is another high-end prospect. And then on defense, Jamie Drysdale did go through his struggles, but he's still very young, and I'm sure he'll figure it out. He still has so many raw tools and so much high-end skill. And then Olin Zellweger just won CHL Defenseman of the Year, an absolute stud out in the WHL. And they also have Pavel Mintyukov, who was the OHL Defenseman of the Year for the Ottawa 67. So on the back end, their future could be Drysdale, Zellweger, and Mintyukov. I mean, that is an absolutely loaded blue line to go along with Zegras, Carlson, and McTavish. So I do understand why the Anaheim Ducks came in at number 1 for Corey Pronman. The Buffalo Sabres came in at number 3. And by the way, one thing I did want to reference, as far as who Corey Pronman was considering as prospects in this prospect pool ranking, anyone drafted in 2019 or after was involved in these prospect pool rankings. 2019 or before had exited. So for the Buffalo Sabres, Rasmus Dahlin is no longer considered a prospect, but they do still have Dylan Cousins, Owen Power, Jack Quinn, Zach Benson, Peyton Krebs, Devin Levy in net, JJ Paterka. They have a really solid prospect pool in Buffalo, and a team to keep an eye out for these next few years. I'll tell you what, They kind of give me New Jersey Devils vibes heading into this season. It feels like something special could be mounting up there in Buffalo. Coming in at number 4, speak of the Devils, was none other than New Jersey, led by Jack Hughes and Luke Hughes, of course. Dawson Mercer has been an absolute stud as well. Another guy who I really would have liked the Blackhawks to take at number 17 in 2020, but absolutely no complaints here from Lucas Reichel. They also have Simone Nemec on the back end, their best blue line prospect other than Luke Hughes. They also have Alexander Holtz, a former high-end first-round pick that's still young and in the system right now. Nolan Foote's a big-bodied forward that they have too. So yeah, New Jersey looks like they have something built up for success for a long, long time moving forward. The Columbus Blue Jackets came in at number 5, led by Adam Fantilli, the 3rd overall selection in this year's draft, which I still couldn't believe. David Jiricek was another solid pick of them. They have Kent Johnson, who played in the NHL this past year. Cole Sillinger went through struggles in his sophomore campaign. He actually was in the AHL by the end of the season, but still a young kid with plenty of experience under his belt, just going to get more and more reps. They drafted Gavin Brindley this year. They also have Stanislav Svozil, Yegor Chinikov, really solid prospect pool for the Jackets. The Canadians came in on number 6, led by Cole Caulfield, who was an absolute goal-scoring machine last year before he sadly had his season cut short. They also have Juraj Slafkovsky, the number 1 overall pick in the 2022 NHL Draft. David Reinbacher, the 5th overall selection this year. Kirby Dach, who us Blackhawks fans are well acquainted with. Caden Gooley. They acquired Alex Newhook. Lane Hudson is an electric small little defenseman. Owen Beck. They have Jan Misak on the back end as well. Really, really deep prospect pool for the Montreal Canadiens. Ottawa Senators came in at number 7, led by Timmy Stützle, Jake Sanderson, Shane Pinto. It feels like the Senators, in my opinion, have a lot of high-end talent at the top, aren't maybe as deep as some other prospect pools. Tyler Boucher, Mads Sogard, Tyler Klevin kind of round out their pool. The Detroit Red Wings came in at number 8. Mo Seider obviously has been phenomenal on the back end for them. Lucas Raymond, been a little bit of a Blackhawk killer in his young NHL career, looks really good. Nate Danielson was someone who I was really hoping was going to fall into the Blackhawks' lap in this year's draft. Simone Edvinsson is a smooth skating big Swedish defenseman. They also added Axel Sandin Pellikka, which I thought was a really good pick. They have William Wallinder. Sebastian Casa was an interesting pick a couple of years ago, but still a lot to like with his big body. Elmer Soderblom, the brother of Blackhawks netminder Arvid Soderblom, of course, and Carter Mazer, a teammate of Aiden Thompson at the University of Denver. I really like the Detroit Red Wings prospect pool, but it is kind of time for them to start getting through that rebuild stage. The Kraken, kind of interestingly, came in at number 9, led by Matty Beniers, an absolute stud. They also have Shane Wright, Edward Chalet. In this year's draft, they added Lucas Dragicevic, was a defenseman I really liked, and then Ty Cartier, who came up for them in the postseason and scored his first goal in the playoffs as well. And then to round things out for Corey Pronman in his top 10, he had the Minnesota Wild, the only other team in the top 10 in the NHL Central Division, led by Matt Boldy. They also have Marco Rossi, Jesper Wallstead, probably the best goaltender prospect in the NHL. Charlie Stramel was a first-round pick in this year's draft. Brock Faber emerged onto the scene for them late in the season as well. Liam Ogren was a first-round pick a few years ago. Carson Lambos. Riley Height, I thought, was a really good later-round selection for them. They have Adam Beckman as well. So a pretty deep prospect pool that Bill Guerin and the Minnesota Wild have accumulated recently as well. So that's how Corey Pronman rounds out his top 10, but you got to love seeing the Chicago Blackhawks come in at number 2, baby, pushing for the best prospect pool in the entire NHL. That's what it's all about. That's what Kyle Davidson envisioned. That's what all of us Blackhawks fans were hoping for when he took over and went into this full-scale rebuild and outlined this plan of his. But I'd be lying if I said I expected it to happen this fast. I think Kyle Davidson has absolutely exceeded expectations up to this point, and it sure feels like something special could be coming forward for the Chicago Blackhawks. Before I kind of move on to my next thing, though, real quick, I did want to mention the other Central Division teams and where Corey Pronman had their prospect pool ranks. A lot of middle of the pack after the Blackhawks at number 2 in the Minnesota Wild at number 9. He had the Arizona Coyotes, interestingly, at number 12. And then a slew of Central Division teams in a row. The Nashville Predators at number 16. The Dallas Stars at number 17. The St. Louis Blues at number 18. The Winnipeg Jets at number 19. And then the Colorado Avalanche, the last Central Division team. It's the price you pay for winning right now. They come in at number 25. All right, folks, there are Corey Pronman's top 10 prospect pool rankings, with the Blackhawks coming in at number 2. Coming up in just a moment, I will share my own personal top 10 prospect pool rankings and discuss which teams I think will be an absolute problem in the next few years. But first, I need to talk to you all about FanDuel. Take your first swing at betting on Major League Baseball on FanDuel, and you can get 10 times your first bet amount in bonus bets up to $200. That's right. Just bet $20 and you'll land $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. And that's $200 that you can spend betting on everything from the money line to the over-under to who you think is going to hit the first home run of the game. And I personally have been riding hot lately, betting on my boy Cody Bellinger, who the Chicago Cubs absolutely need to pay this offseason because he has been nothing short of spectacular. Hit a couple of bets, same game parlays involving Cody Bellinger and the Chicago Cubs to win. That's covered nicely, as the Cubs have really been hot here in the second half, led by Cody Bellinger. There's no better place to bet on the Major League Baseball, on the MLB, than FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. So sign up today and visit FanDuel.com/lockdown to get up to $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com/lockdown. FanDuel, an official partner of Major League Baseball. All right, we're back here on the Locked On Blackhawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Segment 2, I figured with Corey Pronman releasing his top 10 prospect pool rankings last week, I might as well go ahead and just for the sake of having fun here in the offseason, that's what talking about hockey in the month of August is all about, after all. I figure I may as well go ahead and do my own top 10 prospect pool rankings. And I have gone pretty hard covering the NHL draft these last few years with the Blackhawks, getting more and more draft picks. And just, since taking over as the host of this show, I want to know a lot about the future of the Blackhawks organization. And I feel like that's really what I've enjoyed the most since taking over as the host of this show, is keeping up with all the prospects and figuring out who could be the next piece of the puzzle for this Blackhawks squad. And obviously, it's a lot more interesting to do that when they have the second best prospect pool in the entire NHL. But since, I have been kind of focusing on the draft pretty hard, I do feel like I have a pretty good knowledge of a lot of these prospects and a lot of these teams. And obviously, I'm watching the Blackhawks every night, keeping up with hockey. I'm a fan of the game, so I know a lot of these players that way as well. So I think I can put together a pretty decent top 10 prospect pool rankings list here, and make sure to go and drop your opinion on my top 10 rankings down below. And also go and comment as to whether you think the Blackhawks have the best prospect pool in the entire NHL. I'm really curious to hear what everybody thinks on that matter. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and get right into it. Coming in at number 1, I'm doing something that you viewers out there probably won't appreciate too much, but I'm going with a 1A and a 1B because it was really tough for me to choose. Obviously, I have my biases for the Chicago Blackhawks being the host of this show. What I will say is I think the Blackhawks have the deepest prospect pool in the entire NHL, and it's only going to get deeper and deeper with the amount of draft picks that Kyle Davidson has accumulated. But there's absolutely no denying how sweet the Anaheim Ducks future is looking. I mean, I talked about it a little bit in last segment. The forward group of Mason McTavish, Trevor Zegras, and Leo Carlson moving forward, and then to have Jamie Drysdale, Olin Zellweger, and Pavel Mintyukov on the back end. I mean, 2 of those guys were the best defensemen in junior hockey this past year. And even though Jamie Drysdale went through his struggles, another top 10 pick there. I mean, the Ducks' future is looking absolutely bright. They might have a little bit more high-end talent than the Blackhawks do, other than Connor Bedard, of course. And I also think they are a little bit more proven than the Hawks are at this point. given that Trevor Zegras has already stepped onto the scene. Drysdale's already had a full NHL season. McTavish has played games as well. So I will give them a little bit of an edge if I'm being honest, but I do think the Blackhawks, in terms of how many solid prospects they have that I believe are going to be NHL players, I think they absolutely do have the deepest prospect pool. So talent-wise and experience, I'm going to go with the Ducks, but I do think the Blackhawks are deeper overall. So that's kind of why I went with a 1A, 1B split here. But I do think undoubtedly they have the two best prospect pools in the entire NHL at this point in time, and you can kind of flip them any way you want to. Connor Bedard, I think, is the best player of either of those teams, but the Ducks have a lot of high-end talent as well. Coming in at number 3 for me, I do have the New Jersey Devils. Corey Pronman had them ranked number 4, but I think when you can still have Jack Hughes in here being the number 1 overall pick in 2019, and he hasn't technically graduated that prospect stage yet, along with his brother Luke. Dawson Mercer looked like an absolute beast. Simon Nemec's coming onto the scene. Alexander Holtz. There's a lot to like with the New Jersey Devils moving forward. And I think having two superstar Hughes brothers, I mean, what Luke did late in the year and in the playoffs when he joined that team after leaving Michigan, it was truly unbelievable. And to think that they could have two Hughes superstars, one playing forward, one playing D, I think they absolutely are the third best prospect pool, which is scary to think because of how good they were this past season, and to think they have the number 3 prospect pool and not even everyone's really hitting their full potential yet is a scary thought for other NHL clubs moving forward. Coming in at number 4 for me, this was where it got a little bit tough. I did still have the Buffalo Sabres, even though Rasmus Dahlin has graduated. I still think having Dylan Cousins, who, man, another guy who would have been a phenomenal 3rd overall pick for the Blackhawks back in 2019. What he's able to do, the step that he took offensively this past season, while also being a guy that can affect the game in all 3 zones. Yeah, he looks like an absolute stud. Owen Power has the shape to be an absolutely sound puck-moving defensive defenseman. And then he adds Jack Quinn, Zach Benson as well, Peyton Krebs, who has gone through some tough things these last couple of years, but I think is going to be a good NHL player. Devin Levi has had success everywhere he's been, was an absolute stud for Northeastern, of course, was the goalie for Team Canada. So I do have the Buffalo Sabres still coming in at number 4. At number 5, this is where I kind of go off the board a little bit. I guess not off the board, but a little bit different than what Corey Pronman had. I actually have the Detroit Red Wings coming in at number 5, and I know that's kind of painful, I'm sure, to hear for a lot of Blackhawks fans out there, even though the Wings are in the Eastern Conference now. The rivalry is, of course, not the same, but I really like what general manager Steve Yzerman has done. I mean, the trouble is, it's been forever, and the Red Wings feel like they've been at this stage for far too long, but there's no denying the talent that they have. I mean, Mo Seider, an absolute stud number 1 defenseman of the future. Lucas Raymond maybe didn't take the steps that everyone wanted last year, but still looks like he has the tools at a young age to be a very good player. I loved the Nate Danielson pick in this year's draft. Some people said it was too early. I don't think so whatsoever. I think that kid's going to be a stud. They also have Simone Edvinsson. I really like the Axel Sandin-Palika pick. I just think this Detroit Red Wings team, if they can just get a couple more pieces, they got something special brewing there. It kind of hurts me to say it, but I really like the Red Wings prospect pool. Coming in at number 6 for me, I have the Columbus Blue Jackets. Adam Fantilli falling in their laps is absolutely mwah. They add him and Kent Johnson, 2 Michigan boys. Cole Sillinger, I talked about his struggles, but you got to believe in him. David Jiricek looks like an absolute stud defenseman. They get Gavin Brindley. It looks like there are better days to come for sure for this Blue Jackets organization after a tough last season. Coming in at number 7 for me, I have this could have been either or for me. It could have been the Montreal Canadiens or the Ottawa Senators. And I think it's interesting that they have that Canadian battle, of course, and I find them neck and neck in my prospect pool. But I ended up going with the Montreal Canadiens just because I think they have the deeper prospect pool. Cole Caulfield, Slavkovsky, Kirby Dachis, still technically a prospect in this. Caden Gooley, David Reinbacher, I really like that pick. The clear-cut top defenseman in this year's draft. Alex Newhook, I think it's still too early to tell, but I think that will probably work out to be a good trade for them. I like Lane Hudson. I like Owen Beck as well. I think that's a really deep prospect pool too. And then for the Senators, I do like Tim Stützle, obviously. Jake Sanderson had a pretty sound first NHL campaign last year. Shane Pinto is a forward prospect that I've been intrigued by for the last 2-3 years now. Man, he was an absolute stud in college, and I really liked his game. Thought that was a really solid pick by the Senators when they drafted him. Tyler Boucher, if you kind of remove the fact that he was the 10th overall pick, I know there's been some injury concerns, but I like him as well. Mads Sogard is an absolutely huge 6'7" goalie. So I had the Senators coming in just behind the Canadiens at number 8. At number 9, I have the Arizona Coyotes, who Corey Pronman had ranked number 12. I have them coming in at number 9, and I do agree that they kind of went with some foolish picks in this year's draft, at least in terms of value. Just kind of interesting selecting Daniil Boot at number 6, or was it even Simashev at 6? I can't remember. They selected Simashev and Daniil Boot both way too early, but they're still a really good prospect pool that they've racked up, led by Logan Cooley, Dylan Gunther, and Connor Geekie. JJ Moser has graduated the stage, but they also still have Matthias Michelli, who had a phenomenal rookie year for them. Michael Harabel, who you could argue was the best goalie in this year's draft, up for debate with Adam Guyon as well, who the Blackhawks selected. Daniil Boot, I don't love, but we'll see. I did like Simashev, but not that early. Victor Soderstrom was another early first-round pick for them that hasn't necessarily panned out, but there is still high-end talent there for the Arizona Coyotes, and Logan Cooley, Dylan Gunther, and Connor Geekie. So I have them coming in at number 9. And then at number 10, I actually had the Minnesota Wild as well, who I think kind of similar to the Senators, or the Canadiens, a deep prospect pool, maybe not high-end talent other than Matt Boldy. Marco Rossi still has a lot to prove, Jesper Wallstedt, but they have a lot of players who feel like they could be NHL regulars and kind of fill out their roster. So I have the Minnesota Wild coming in at number 10 to kind of round things out in terms of my top 10 NHL prospect pool rankings. Go and comment down below as to how you feel about those rankings. Let me know if you think the Blackhawks come in at number 1, or if you give the Anaheim Ducks the slight edge over them heading into the 2023-2024 NHL campaign.